Self-doubt can linger as a quiet voice in your mind, questioning whether you're ready, worthy, or capable of stepping into the situations that call for your full potential. It can steal attention at critical moments, making you second-guess decisions that once felt logical or even exciting. Yet that same lingering doubt can be the spark that pushes you to prepare more thoroughly, to explore new ideas, and to strengthen your resolve. Instead of viewing it as an enemy to be conquered, you can treat self-doubt as a reminder to focus on growth rather than perfection. Each time you face that inner hesitation head-on, you sharpen the skills and resilience that form the bedrock of unbreakable confidence. Rather than waiting for doubts to vanish, you learn to move forward with them, reframing uncertainty as an indication that you're stretching beyond the comfortable and into territories where genuine progress happens. In this way, self-doubt evolves from a crippling question mark to a catalyst for transformation, fueling an ever-deepening sense of personal power that comes not from the absence of fear, but from acting courageously alongside it. Recognition is the first crucial step in turning doubt into power. Many assume that only those who appear confident on the outside live without apprehension. But in reality, almost everyone experiences pockets of insecurity. The difference is that some people interpret uncertainty as a push towards self-improvement, while others read it as a verdict on their potential. By treating doubt as a signal, perhaps to research more, to practice a bit longer, or to connect with someone who has faced a similar hurdle, you begin channeling those nagging questions into constructive actions. In doing so, you find that your sense of control expands because you see yourself influencing outcomes through deliberate effort, rather than surrendering to the idea that you're just not enough. Self-awareness plays a pivotal role here. Doubts can arise from deeply rooted narratives like past experiences of failure or unhelpful comparisons to others who seem to excel effortlessly. When you start to ask, where does this specific doubt come from? You might uncover a pattern. Maybe you hesitate about giving presentations because of a single negative comment you received years ago, or you doubt your creative ideas because someone once dismissed them. Mapping these origins can reveal that what feels like a universal truth, I can't handle this, is actually a specific reaction to an event, person, or assumption that you've carried around. Realizing this grants you freedom to question whether that old story still holds weight, or whether it can be rewritten to accommodate your growing capabilities. Thought patterns that spiral into self-doubt often hinge on imagining the worst outcome or focusing on personal shortcomings. By deliberately reframing negative thoughts, you introduce a different narrative. I might not know how to do this yet, but I can learn. Or I may be nervous, but that doesn't mean I'm incapable. This shift isn't about ignoring real obstacles. It's about refusing to define your entire future by the possibility of failing. You're creating mental room for growth, acknowledging that mastery is a process and that your worth isn't tied to one outcome. Each time you practice this reframing, you loosen the grip of doubt. Even if that doubt doesn't vanish completely, it begins to share space with a more empowering viewpoint. Small experiments can bolster this shift in perspective. If you often feel inadequate in group discussions, set a modest target like speaking up once with a clear, concise point. Whether it goes smoothly or not, you demonstrate to yourself that you can act even under uncertainty. These small, repeatable wins accumulate, each one chipping away at the narrative that doubt is an unbeatable force. Over time, you see patterns of your own resilience emerging. You start to trust that even if you're not fully prepared, you can adapt in the moment, reorient, and try again. This trust in your adaptability is a cornerstone of real confidence because it doesn't rely on being perfect. It relies on your ability to cope with the imperfect. Embodying confidence at a physical level can shape your mental state. Simple acts like standing tall, breathing steadily, and making deliberate eye contact signal to your brain that you're in a position of capability rather than threat. While such gestures may initially feel like superficial tricks, they anchor you in moments when the pull of doubt is strong. This practice teaches you that you have tools at your disposal to navigate discomfort rather than letting uncertainty set the stage. As a result, you build a feedback loop where your posture and demeanor reinforce a steadier mental frame, which in turn supports more composed actions. Self-doubt is often fueled by an overly narrow definition of success. If you believe that only flawless performances count, you place an enormous burden on yourself. Broadening that definition, allowing for partial successes, incremental improvements, and lessons drawn from missteps alleviates the pressure that feeds doubt. You can say, I didn't accomplish everything I aimed for, but I improved in these key areas. This reframing puts emphasis on learning and momentum rather than final verdicts on your worth or ability. The result is more room to maneuver, to experiment, and to adjust without labeling those adjustments as failures. A strong network can further dismantle self-limiting beliefs. When you align with mentors, peers, or friends who see your potential, they hold up a mirror that reveals strengths you might overlook in yourself. Their feedback, given constructively, can help you realize that many of your doubts are distortions rather than reflections of fact. At the same time, hearing about their own struggles can normalize your internal battles, reminding you that uncertainty is universal, not a personal flaw. You then become part of a mutual support system, elevating each other's confidence with practical advice, cheerleading, and the candid exchange of experiences. An honest appraisal of your skills matters. Sometimes doubt arises from a real gap in knowledge or capability that needs attention. In that scenario, ignoring the gap won't help. You build confidence by actively addressing it. If you're anxious about managing a project, perhaps it's time to read more about effective methods or to shadow someone with expertise you admire. Doing so transforms the doubt from an emotional drain into a practical problem you can solve. Each improvement or new insight is evidence that you're closing the gap, fortifying the sense that your abilities aren't static but malleable. You learn to trust yourself, not because you assume you know everything, but because you're willing and able to learn what's needed. Reflection can be formal or informal. Formal reflections might involve journaling at the end of each day, noting times your self-doubt flared up, how you handled it, and what you learned. Informal reflections might be as simple as pausing briefly after a meeting to ask, what went well, and where did doubt creep in? Over time, you notice patterns. Maybe you tend to doubt yourself more when you're tired or when facing tasks that involve numbers or unfamiliar audiences. Equipped with that knowledge, you can plan accordingly. Another angle is to measure yourself primarily against your own progress. instead of comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Comparison is one of the quickest ways to amplify doubt, especially if you only see the polished exterior of someone else's journey. By focusing on your incremental improvements, how you're performing relative to yesterday or last month, you keep the spotlight on growth rather than on an unrealistic standard. This approach recognizes that each person's path is different, shaped by unique starting points, setbacks, and opportunities. It honors the fact that mastery takes time, so you're not discrediting your efforts simply because you haven't reached a particular milestone yet. That shift gradually allows you to appreciate self-doubt as a kind of early warning system for areas that need extra attention. Instead of labeling doubt as an outright enemy, you begin to see its value in highlighting blind spots or revealing old habits that might no longer serve you. If you consistently feel uncertain when asked to demonstrate a particular skill, that may suggest investing additional time in that skill is worthwhile. In this sense, self-doubt functions like a guidepost, directing your energies toward growth rather than simply chipping away at your confidence. Instead of ignoring it, you can meet it halfway, investigating what it's trying to tell you, then taking a proactive step, like seeking out resources, advice, or deeper practice to address the concern at its root. It's valuable to note that the path to unbreakable confidence doesn't mean you'll never stumble or revert to old thought patterns. Life evolves in cycles. Certain triggers or challenges might resurface unexpectedly, bringing with them a wave of anxiety or hesitation. The difference, over time, is that you acquire a toolkit for responding. Where once you might have withdrawn or convinced yourself you were incapable, now you pause, breathe, reflect on your progress, and figure out a strategy to move forward. That's the essence of turning self-doubt into power. The doubt might still appear, but it no longer dictates the final outcome. Instead, it sparks you to think more creatively, to tap into determination, and to lean on your self-awareness, eventually forging greater self-belief. Sometimes the road to confidence involves moments of legitimate failure, times when you really do attempt something and fall short. The crucial factor is how you interpret that failure. Do you view it as proof of your inherent limits, or do you see it as a lesson in what needs to be adjusted? If you take the latter route, even an embarrassing or disappointing defeat can become a stepping stone. You might discover an overlooked detail, a missing piece of preparation, or a mindset you need to recalibrate. Overcoming the emotional sting and channeling it into refinement is a hallmark of resilient confidence. Every time you bounce back in this way, doubt recedes a bit more, replaced by evidence that you're truly adaptable. Emotional resilience goes hand in hand with harnessing self-doubt. If each pang of uncertainty sends you into a spiral of self-criticism, your energy depletes before you can apply it toward improvement. Learning to self-soothe through calming routines, healthy outlets, or supportive conversations prevents you from becoming overwhelmed. Instead of sinking deeper into the negative loop, you pause, acknowledge your feelings, and find a constructive release. This process can be as simple as taking a moment to write down everything swirling in your head, thereby externalizing the fears so they stop running rampant inside. Once you see your concerns on paper, they often appear more manageable. Balancing self-compassion with accountability is equally important. Self-compassion means you accept that you won't nail every attempt and that it's human to experience lapses in confidence. Accountability ensures you don't use that acceptance as an excuse to stagnate. You hold yourself responsible for growth, promising not to avoid challenges just because you might struggle. This dual approach helps you stay motivated without beating yourself up when you hit bumps in the road. You're neither complacent nor overly harsh. Instead, you give yourself permission to progress at a realistic pace while still aiming higher when you feel ready. Developing a personal mantra can serve as a touchstone for moments when doubts roar the loudest. Something as simple as "I act with courage, no matter the uncertainty," or "I learn and adapt, even when I stumble," can refocus your mind in critical junctures. This is not empty self-encouragement. It's a way of grounding yourself in an attitude that reminds you of your bigger picture. By using consistent wording and repeating it, whenever doubts flare, you create a mental anchor. Over time, this anchor becomes more potent, an instinctive reset button that steers you away from panic and toward purpose. Cultivating compassion for others can enhance self-confidence, interestingly enough. When you empathize with another person's trials, you're reminded that everyone grapples with fears and uncertainties. This perspective can lessen the sense that you're uniquely burdened or less capable than everyone else, helping you see that struggle is part of the human condition, not a flaw of your own identity. A kinder outlook on others often translates into a kinder outlook on yourself. As you develop understanding and compassion outwardly, you internalize the same leniency and generosity, acknowledging that growth involves setbacks and that vulnerability doesn't negate strength. Seeing fear as an ally is another powerful reframe. The sensation of nervousness, racing heartbeat, restless mind, often accompanies any meaningful endeavor. Instead of viewing these signals as confirmation of impending failure, see them as energy your body provides to help you perform at a high level. The same adrenaline can sharpen focus if you direct it productively. In that sense, the jitters or trembling hands become reminders that you're alive, alert, and about to do something that matters. You can even label that feeling as excitement rather than fear, harnessing it to increase your alertness. Regularly exposing yourself to uncertainty in controlled doses is a systematic way to build resilience. If public speaking is your crux, start by addressing a small group, maybe a handful of friends, and gradually scale up as your comfort zone widens. Each round of exposure deactivates a bit of the panic response, teaching your mind and body that stepping into such situations doesn't spell doom. You adapt incrementally until the setting that once triggered intense self-doubt feels familiar, even if a trace of nerves remains. This principle applies to many areas: negotiation, social events, creative expressions, anything that stirs up the voice of doubt. With each successful exposure, you gather another piece of evidence that you can operate under stress and come out intact, if not stronger. A noteworthy point is that confidence doesn't require constant positivity. It's possible and completely normal to hold doubts while simultaneously believing you can push through. The presence of fear doesn't cancel out the presence of resolve. In fact, true courage involves acknowledging fear, but moving ahead in spite of it. By treating self-doubt as one voice among many, rather than the definitive statement on your future, you free yourself to engage with life from a stance of possibility rather than limiting caution. In this evolving relationship with uncertainty, You accept that you can feel unsure and still act effectively. That acceptance unlocks a different dimension of confidence. It's no longer about never having anxious thoughts, but about trusting your capacity to navigate them. You gradually reduce the friction that comes from wrestling with doubt at every turn, and you channel that mental energy into growth. This dynamic approach fosters a sense of balance, where you're neither paralyzed by perfectionism nor heedlessly plunging forward. You become nimble, realistic, and open, reinforcing your belief in yourself without needing to eradicate every hint of hesitation. Maintaining momentum involves regular check-ins with yourself. It might be once a week where you review what made you doubt your capabilities, how you responded, and what outcome ensued. You look for wins to celebrate and for gaps to address. This habit is less about perfection than about refinement. Each reflection session reaffirms that you're steering the ship of your personal growth, instead of merely drifting with whatever mood or external event emerges. When you do experience a surge in confidence, you note that as well, capturing the factors that contributed, maybe more practice, kind feedback, or tackling a new challenge bravely. These reflections offer a roadmap of what you can replicate in the future. Your sphere of influence grows as your self-doubt transforms. By modeling perseverance despite fears, you inspire others around you to approach their own uncertainties more courageously. In this sense, your internal shift extends outward, shaping group dynamics, team projects, and personal relationships. People see how you handle setbacks, how you remain open to feedback, and how you shift your perspective from potential disaster to potential discovery. This influence can create a ripple effect, fostering a culture where it's acceptable to admit doubts, but not to be ruled by them. Together, you and those around you lift each other, forging an environment that celebrates growth and effort over rigid ideals of flawlessness. Balancing ambition with patience safeguards against burnout. Yes, self-doubt often shrinks as you face tough endeavors, but driving yourself relentlessly without rest can fray nerves and rebuild uncertainty. There's wisdom in pacing, in recognizing that stepping back to recharge doesn't signify weakness, but rather strategic self-care. By scheduling downtime and gentler pursuits, you make space for your mind to recover, your creativity to flourish, and your emotional reserves to replenish. This cyclical pattern, challenge, exertion, rest, allows you to press forward consistently over the long run, building confidence through sustainable growth rather than all or nothing pushes. Empathy for others' journeys remains an essential part of cultivating lasting self-assurance. When you see someone else wrestle with doubt, offering support or guidance not only helps them, but strengthens your own convictions about the power of encouragement. You reinforce the message that everyone is capable of moving beyond their insecurities, and by affirming this outwardly, you reinforce it within. Each conversation or act of kindness thus becomes a two-way exchange of confidence building, reminding you that the same hope you lend to others can be applied to your own struggles. Revisiting your core values anchors your motivation whenever self-doubt flares unexpectedly. You might articulate why a particular goal matters deeply. Maybe it aligns with your passion for learning or your desire to contribute something meaningful. By connecting to these values, you reaffirm that your efforts aren't arbitrary. They carry personal significance. This knowledge can overshadow the fear of what might go wrong, because even if the result is imperfect, the journey still honors your deeper calling. You realize that, in many ways, the pursuit itself holds a kind of victory, one that transcends any single success or failure. Adjusting your self-talk remains an ongoing process. Habits of negative thinking or harsh internal critiques won't vanish overnight, but through consistent effort, you can soften their hold. Each time you catch a diminishing phrase, like, "I'm just not cut out for this," you replace it with a constructive alternative. "I might struggle, but I will adapt." This gentle reprogramming of mental language takes time, but it accumulates. At first, it might feel forced, but eventually your mind grasps that there's no inherent contradiction in feeling doubt while remaining determined. The two states can coexist, and when they do, your determination often wins out, powered by that updated script. In many respects, the key lies in taking consistent, intentional action despite hesitation. Rather than waiting for a magical day when no trace of doubt exists, you operate under the premise that confidence is built precisely by taking these steps in the presence of fear. In other words, your bravery is validated not by the absence of worry, but by your willingness to proceed anyway. That's the transformative equation at work. Self-doubt plus forward movement equals a growing reservoir of faith in yourself. Over the course of multiple experiences, you see yourself solving problems, navigating awkward moments, and surmounting obstacles you once believed insurmountable. Unbreakable confidence doesn't imply a rigid bravado that never bends. It implies a flexible inner strength that rebounds even when bent. You might have days where old insecurities resurface, or moments when feedback stings more than expected. The difference is that these episodes no longer define your trajectory. They become temporary challenges that you meet with the self-knowledge that you've overcome doubt before and can do so again. Bit by bit, the memory of those past victories lights the way for future endeavors, making each new test less paralyzing than the last. Pausing to celebrate milestones is crucial. When you accomplish something that once felt beyond your reach, take a moment to honor that shift. It can be a simple act like jotting down how you felt before starting and how you feel after finishing, or sharing the achievement with a trusted friend. These moments of recognition encourage your mind to internalize the experience. You faced doubt, acted, and succeeded, or at least discovered valuable insights. That memory then stands as a bulwark against future waves of uncertainty, a lighthouse reminding you that you've charted unknown waters successfully before. Each new challenge is tackled with the quiet assurance that you faced challenges before, and by choosing growth, you made it through. Trust in the process replaces the need for immediate proof of brilliance. You realize that mastery or substantial achievement often requires repeated exposure, multiple adjustments, and a fair amount of resilience. Doubt may persist through these stages, but your confidence grows alongside it, fueled by each instance of perseverance. You start to identify more with the process than with any single result. Failure or success becomes data, not a final declaration of your worth. Indeed, this perspective marks a dramatic evolution in how you relate to self-doubt. It's now woven into the journey, but it doesn't steer the ship. Over time, your understanding of risk shifts. Taking bold steps ceases to seem like a gamble on an unknown future and starts to feel like an investment in your continued expansion. Where once the possibility of getting it wrong weighed heavily, now you value the lessons gleaned from the effort more than the fear of stumbling. You measure growth not only in final outcomes, though they matter, but in your ability to keep evolving through the entire cycle of preparation, execution, and reflection. Unbreakable confidence emerges as the natural byproduct of this dedication to learning, because nothing is wasted. Even missteps become fertile ground for future success. In this world of perpetual self-improvement, the lines between fear and excitement blur. You discover that the quickening of your pulse before a challenging endeavor can be interpreted as a sign you're stretching yourself, rather than a warning to retreat. That adrenaline fuels performance when harnessed, becoming part of the thrill of growth. You accept that being fully alive includes feeling these intense emotions, and you welcome them with curiosity rather than dread. Through each cycle of facing uncertainty, acting and learning from the results, you refine a self-image in which courage and doubt coexist peacefully. And that harmony fuels a robust, enduring sense of self-belief. When you finally turn back to see how far you've come, the doubts that once loomed large appear smaller in retrospect. That's not because they were illusions. It's because you've grown big enough to hold them without being overwhelmed. This realization underlines the essence of unbreakable confidence. It's not about living a doubt-free existence, but about outgrowing the constraints that doubt attempts to impose. Each new horizon comes with its own challenges, but so do you come with an expanded set of abilities and a deeper trust in your capacity to adapt. At that juncture, self-doubt transforms into a faint echo, occasionally reminding you to stay sharp, yet no longer wielding the power to halt your progress. Every day, you affirm the idea that confidence is a practice, not a fixed state. It needs nourishment just like any other skill, through mindful self-talk, deliberate action, reflection, and the choice to keep aiming higher despite discomfort. As you honor that practice, you accumulate resilience, creativity, and unwavering resolve. Self-doubt becomes the fuel that ignites the flame of transformation, guiding you toward achievements and personal breakthroughs that seemed distant before. Ultimately, you embody a confidence anchored not in fleeting bravado, but in the profound knowledge that you are infinitely capable of growth, adaptation, and triumph. With doubt reframed as an ally, you stand on firmer ground, even when the terrain is uncertain. You've shed the notion that every question in your mind signals an inability. Instead, it signals a new frontier to explore. That frontier is both humbling and exhilarating. Humbling because it reminds you there's always more to learn, and exhilarating because each new lesson brings you closer to your fullest potential. In that light, self-doubt transforms from an inner saboteur to a traveling companion who points out where the road could be hazardous, giving you the chance to navigate carefully and emerge stronger than before. Momentum builds as you see how these mental shifts manifest in tangible outcomes, whether it's better performance at work, more ease in social settings, or a deeper sense of self-worth in your personal life. Confidence, once a distant goal, settles in as an ongoing experience, something you cultivate daily, not just a sudden revelation that eradicates all fear. You learn to accept the ebb and flow of emotion, harnessing the highs to fuel bold endeavors and softening the lows with patience and compassion. As you align consistent small actions with your deeper values, that stable sense of self grows, overshadowing the old reflexive doubts that used to govern your behavior. Before you know it, others may start calling you confident, perhaps even seeking your advice on overcoming their own uncertainties. Yet what they call confidence, you recognize as the fruit of many decisions, a refusal to let fear define you, a commitment to keep learning, and the bravery to pursue meaningful aims despite lingering hesitations. This stance isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing to show up fully, fear or not, and trusting that each encounter with doubt shapes you into someone stronger, more resourceful, and more ready for whatever life presents. Over time, the synergy of these repeated acts weaves a narrative of personal power, one you continue to write with every step forward. You see confidence not as a lucky trait some are born with, but as a cultivated skill that emerges from action and reflection. Every human being has the capacity to develop it, provided they make peace with the fact that doubt plays a role in pushing boundaries. In fact, without doubt, many of the world's greatest feats might never happen, because it is that spark of uncertainty that prompts deeper investigation, more dedicated practice, and an occasional leap of faith. The real magic happens when you embrace the leap, harnessing doubt's energy to soar higher instead of letting it keep you grounded. And so self-doubt becomes a potent force for growth, illuminating aspects of your journey that deserve attention. In shining this light, it offers you a choice: remain in hesitation or proceed with faith in your ability to adapt. Repeatedly choosing the latter path ingrains a robust confidence, because you see that your strength outlasts your fear. This isn't to say the transformation is easy or instantaneous. Old habits may cling stubbornly and occasional setbacks might sting. Yet each hurdle transcended writes a new chapter in your personal story, a chapter where you don't dismiss fear but collaborate with it, converting what might have been a stumbling block into a stepping stone. In that sense, unbreakable confidence isn't a final destination. It's an ever-evolving process of relating differently to the uncertainties we all encounter. You might adapt methods, seek fresh mentors, or uncover deeper motivations as you progress. The details of your journey can shift significantly over time, but the underlying principle remains the same. Keep moving, keep learning, and keep welcoming the insights your doubts reveal, without letting them define or confine you. At each stage, you discover new facets of your capability, forging a trust in yourself that no fleeting setback can truly dismantle. Ultimately, you stand as evidence that doubt can be channeled into determination. Each time you face a fresh challenge, you bring forward the lessons gleaned from previous wins and the wisdom distilled from missteps. That accumulation forms the bedrock of self-assurance, a living tapestry woven from all you've dared to attempt, all you've endured, and all you've conquered, both externally and within your own mind. You no longer wait for doubt to fade away. You walk alongside it, reshaping each moment of hesitation into an act of courage, and in doing so, reveal a confidence that is honest, resilient, and boundless. It takes ongoing commitment to preserve this mindset. There may come phases of life when stress spikes or circumstances shift unexpectedly, and you feel old worries resurface. Yet the crucial distinction now is that you have a reservoir of experiences proving your ability to adapt and persevere. That history doesn't vanish in adversity. It becomes a shield of perspective, a reminder of how far you've come. In those moments, you call upon your proven techniques, self-reflection, gradual exposure, supportive networks, and remember that you've already navigated rough waters. Doubt becomes a familiar companion rather than an all-powerful foe, one whose whispered cautions you can weigh but not obey blindly. Confidence isn't constant euphoria. It's the steady conviction that you can meet life's demands, adjust when needed, and keep your sense of self intact through triumphs and failures alike. Living with that conviction frees you to aim high and step boldly, knowing that even if you temporarily stumble, the journey continues. You become the architect of your development, systematically crafting experiences that expand your comfort zone and deepen your belief in what's possible. Over time, this architecture stands as a testament to the extraordinary resilience that once began as mere flickers of doubt. Confidence built on the foundation of doubt is far less fragile than confidence that's never tested. The latter can crumble at the first hint of criticism or failure, while the former, shaped by countless brushes with uncertainty, stands firm. You acknowledge that you're not immune to miscalculations or unforeseen difficulties, but neither are you bound by them. You have internalized the idea that every setback contains a seed of insight waiting to be cultivated, turning what looks like defeat into an avenue for growth. This cyclical dance of challenge and renewal cements your belief that while fear may visit, it does not overshadow your ability to learn and prevail. In the end, turning self-doubt into power is a story of redefinition. You redefine what it means to be unsure, flipping it from a reason to halt into a reason to prepare, refine, or seek new knowledge. Through this redefinition, you unearth the essence of confidence, a quiet, solid state of readiness to face both success and setback with grace and persistence. As you refine that state day by day, you welcome challenges, recognizing them as necessary steps on the path to deeper self-mastery. You let each moment of hesitation serve as a beacon pointing the way to untapped capabilities. Thus, confidence unfolds not as a flashy persona, but as an authentic expression of who you are becoming, anchored in deeds rather than mere declarations. At this stage, your relationship with doubt feels more like a friendly rivalry than a hostile takeover. You expect it to show up here and there, particularly when you're attempting something new or bold. Yet you know that you're equipped to handle its presence and use it as impetus to level up. The conversation in your head evolves. If I'm doubting myself, that means I'm forging new territory. Let me investigate what precisely worries me and make a plan. That plan might be to gather resources, to practice a technique repeatedly, or to discuss your concerns with a mentor. Each practical measure becomes an act of self-empowerment, showing doubt that while you appreciate its input, you'll be guiding the next steps. This guidance weaves into everyday life until it becomes second nature. Eventually, you look back at how you used to freeze or disqualify yourself and realize you've moved beyond those habits, not by erasing doubt, but by alchemizing it into forward motion. The growth may feel slow in the moment, but in retrospect, it's quite remarkable. Each trial that once loomed impossibly large appears in hindsight as a pivotal lesson that shaped your character and expanded your skill set. You recognize that your mind, once so eager to highlight reasons for hesitance, can be trained to see reasons to persist. The journey completes a cycle, from fear that implies paralysis to fear that fuels preparation, leading to action that forges genuine confidence. By cycling through this process repeatedly, you accumulate a record of triumph over self-doubt. Each new doubt simply triggers a familiar response, reminding you to look for solutions, support, or learning tools. Over time, the anxiety that once would have taken center stage becomes more of a passing thought. You forge ahead, guided by the knowledge that even if the results aren't perfect, they'll inform your ongoing evolution. Confidence thus reveals itself as an act of construction, piece by piece, rather than an innate gift. You see it in small gestures. The day you spoke in a meeting, the time you refused to let an early setback define your entire project, the moment you reached out for help instead of suffering in silence. It becomes a mosaic, with each tile representing a decision to engage with life rather than shrink back, to keep curiosity alive instead of letting doubt decide. You learn that every tile has value, both the ones that look like successes and the ones that look like missteps, because each is part of the grand design that is your personal empowerment. Eventually, you realize that much of the external pressure that once seemed so daunting was amplified by your internal dialogues. As you gain the ability to modulate those dialogues, the external world feels less intimidating. Opportunities you might have dismissed as unattainable start to appear within reach, not because they've changed, but because you have. You interpret challenges with a new lens, and that lens reframes risk as a chance to deepen your skill or broaden your perspective. This perspective shift is subtle yet profound, allowing you to meet life with a steady internal compass. As your certainty in your adaptive capabilities solidifies, you may find yourself drawn to goals or visions that once felt too big. The distance that seemed impassable narrows as you focus on each workable step, each bit of knowledge or training that brings the goal closer. Doubt still whispers, but you answer it with a pragmatic plan, a small experiment, or the memory of a past win. Over days and weeks, these incremental actions accumulate, sometimes surprising even you when you pause to see how far you've progressed. At times, you might face those who question your journey or doubt your capacity. In those interactions, the confidence you've cultivated reminds you not to internalize their skepticism automatically. You weigh their words thoughtfully. Maybe they have a valid point, or maybe they're projecting their own fears. Either way, you discern which feedback is constructive and which is noise. That discernment becomes part of your self-defensive skill set, ensuring that negativity from others doesn't reignite old uncertainties unchecked. Indeed, you harness those moments as further opportunities to test and affirm your inner resolve. One of the crowning outcomes of turning self-doubt into power is that you stop treating uncertainty as a stoplight. Instead, it's a signpost indicating where you can grow next. The more this reframing becomes second nature, the more freedom you possess in crafting your life. Where you used to see reasons to hold back, you now see invitations to expand. This transformation isn't about recklessness. You still weigh risks, but you approach them with a balanced sense of caution and curiosity. You measure what you might gain against what you might lose. And often you find that the growth possibilities eclipse the dangers you once magnified in your mind. Self-doubt loses its power when you welcome it as part of the process, using each question as a way to deepen your preparation, expand your skills, and build new layers of self-trust. Rather than fighting it, you learn to channel it, forging resilience through repeated acts of courage. You shape a life in which challenges are met with readiness and curiosity, and setbacks serve as lessons that refine your approach. Doubt becomes an ally in your pursuit of mastery, pointing out where to grow, while your confidence grows ever sturdier through every tested hypothesis, every adapted strategy, and every moment of daring to press on despite the unknown. Thus, you stand in true, unbreakable confidence. Not because you conquered fear, but because you learned to transform it into the spark that illuminates your boldest and most authentic path forward.